But the other big story this evening, and it continues to be about tax, with just a few days to go for the union budget, the government has made some crucial clarifications on the General Anti-Avoidance Rules, or GAR. Let's take you through the highlights. Right at the top, there will be no delay, no extension, so the government clarifying that GAR will indeed be effective from the 1st of April 2017. There's no change in the time frame. At number 2, the government will not interfere with the right of the taxpayer to choose whatever method of transaction they please. 3, if the case of tax avoidance is addressed by the limitation of benefits clause in a bilateral tax treaty, then GAR will not be invoked. Now remember, the government has tweaked tax treaties with Mauritius, Singapore and Cyprus, so those treaties will take precedence over GAR. Is it as simple as that, is the question. Not just that, GAR will not be applicable if the location of the foreign investor is on a non-tax commercial consideration. And finally, this is the good news, the grandfathering will be applicable to all convertible instruments before the 1st of April this year. Well, 2 eminent tax experts join us now to take this discussion forward. Have concerns been allayed by that clarification that's come in from the CBDT? Sudhir Kapadia of EY and our budget editor Dinesh Kanabar of Dhruva Advisors join us as well. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. Mr. Kanabar, let me start by asking you, I think, what is welcome there is the clause or the clarification with respect to grandfathering. But do you believe the clarifications have suitably allayed concerns that investors have with respect to GAR?
So first, Shirin, these are not the regulations under GAR, the rules which are supposed to come out. This is really a circular where a working group which was set up and which had raised certain questions, those questions have been sought to be answered, number 1. Number 2, I heard your initial comments on some of the issues getting addressed, and I wish I could share all the optimism that you were exuding. Indeed, one of the very positive things is that the grandfathering, including in respect of convertible instruments, has been done. That's a very positive thing. So there was one concern that if there was a convertible instrument, but the conversion happened post the introduction of GAR, would those be investments be grandfathered or not? And the answer is that yes, those will be grandfathered. But in respect of the tax treaties, what the circular says is that if there is a limitation of benefit article in a tax treaty, then if the limitation sufficiently addresses issues in relation to GAR, then GAR will not be invoked, otherwise GAR will be. So in a sense, that's a very ambivalent statement, does not take us any further at all. Most of the other questions, if I may dare say and give an analogy, Shirin, is akin to the earlier circular which came on FPI, the Section 9 circular, which is just reiterating the provisions of the law, which can't be denied. But again, the point which you made with regard to method of choosing to do a transaction does not take us much further. Some positive news, but I wish there were far more clarifications than what we have got at this point of time.
Okay, so Mr. Kapadia, would you agree with Mr. Kanabar that largely status quo, but yes, a step in the right direction, some welcome clarifications coming in there from the CBDT, but a lot of the subjectivity specifically to do with the LOB part remains?
Well, I think I'd probably be a bit more optimistic than Dinesh appears to be at this point, for 2 reasons. See, one is, I think ideally what we should have got is, clarifications by way of examples. Several months ago, a lot of stakeholders had given, case studies to the Ministry of Finance at the specific request of the Ministry of Finance to say, tell us specific cases and we will tell you how will GAR apply. So what we were really hoping for, and that's the disappointing part personally, if you ask me, that what we were really hoping for is clarifying basis those kind of examples. So if I keep that disappointment aside, for the park that aside, then the positives I see 3 in this set of clarifications. One is, though I agree that it was always the case, always understood, but it is good that it is clarified very clearly, and I think it's very critical from the funds, inbound funds point of view, that if you have set up a fund outside of India, for a non-tax commercial purpose, which is really a collective investment vehicle bringing people from all over the world, that should not be a trigger for GAR. I think it's a welcome clarification. I'm sure the funds industry would welcome it. I think the second part, I agree that it's perhaps academic in one level that, if there is a sufficient LOB, then GAR need not apply. That is where I think they should have clarified with specific examples to say these are the treaties where we are comfortable with the LOB clause and it will not apply. It's a good clarification, but it could have been far more specific. The third good one, I think, and it's very important clarification, that the right of the taxpayer to select a particular method of implementing a transaction. I think it's a very welcome clarification. If I do a demerger and it is tax neutral, GAR should not apply. It's a good thing that they have clarified that choice is left to me. So three good things, examples would have been welcome.
Three good things, examples would have been welcome. Mr. Kanabar, has Mr. Kapadia helped swing you a little bit further into his camp?
No, I don't at all disagree with what Sudhir is saying. I think the point really is, first of all, the request for GAR clarifications has been there right from April onwards. We are getting something towards the end of the next budget. So here we are, the budget is 4 days around the corner. We are getting certain clarifications. Those clarifications, I wish were far more better worded. Let me give you another example. There is an issue as to where there is a specific anti-avoidance regulation. So Sudhir rightly, for example, alluded about choice of doing a particular transaction in a particular manner. Now, if you take a merger or a demerger, whether a merger or a demerger is a tax neutral one, there are specific regulations which are there. And if those are complied, should GAR apply? And one would have thought consistent with the SHOAM committee's recommendations that GAR ought not to apply where specific abuse regulations have been complied with. The answer is no, they will still apply. Now that's not taking the matter a lot further. Again, qua funds, the general statement is that if you have been set up for other than tax reasons and that tax is not the prime reason, then you will be entitled to TT benefits. That's neither here nor there. That's a given position. That's been one other positive one which I could see really quite was that if in a particular year a transaction has been held to be not covered by GAR, then subsequent year the same position would clarify. I think that's a positive one.
Okay, so we've tried to discuss some of the clarifications or further clarifications that the CBDT may have to issue, and that's what they've said in the circular that they've issued today. But before I let you go, Mr. Kapadia, let me end by asking you, we've got the budget now on the 1st of February. In light of what we've heard from the government today, it's very clear the GAR will roll out on the 1st of April. What do you expect the budget specifically, if anything at all, to say on this matter?
Just two things. One is one other thing which I think is not very helpful in these clarifications is the fact that they are saying that if the court in a case of a restructuring were to have examined the tax implications, then the tax officer need not invoke GAR. In practice, when courts approve corporate reorganizations, they don't get into really blessing the tax aspects of it. So I'm not sure whether that part of the clarification will be practically useful. Anyway, enough on the clarifications. To your point, Shireen, I mean, I think I've stated earlier, at least our analysis reveals that the government should get a leg up of about 0.75% in terms of a impetus to the tax GDP ratio because of demonetization. And we expect another 0.75 conservatively on the GST. Of course, it will be 9 months and not 12 months. So I personally think the government has a lot of room to play around with, but I think they'll use it more on the expenditure side.
They'll use it more on the expenditure side. Well, we will have to come back to the two of you when the budget details are revealed on the 1st of February. Will the government find itself more fiscal space to play around with is the big question. Dinesh Kanabar, Sudhir Kapadia, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us on India Business Hour. Well,